Where elegance meets insight, this is the podcast that crowns every moment with beauty and brilliance. You're now listening to the Spicy Tiara official podcast.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into a really interesting source. It's a transcript of a speech.
That's right, a speech given by Susanti, who was representing Thailand at an event.
And our mission today, well, it's to really unpack what she said, get to the core of her message,
Right.
what drives her, and the actual work she's doing.
Exactly. And we're doing this just by looking closely at the words in this transcript. It's quite a blend: personal story, data, advocacy.
And concrete action, too.
Right. So we're digging into her main point, this kind of surprising insight she had, and the details of her project, even the content they create.
Okay, let's get started. So she introduces herself, representing Thailand, background in international relations, which is interesting.
Yeah, and she immediately says this isn't just like standard diplomacy for her.
Right. It's a chance, a platform, she says, to really stand up for your beliefs.
And that belief, that cause, she names it straight away. It's breast cancer.
Which she then ties into this really fundamental idea about healthcare.
Yes, that basic healthcare shouldn't depend on, how much money you have or where you come from. It should be for everyone.
Universal access.
That's the principle.
Yeah.
It underpins everything else she talks about, really.
And then, wow, it gets very personal. She shares this story from when she was just 16.
Yeah, about having surgery to remove a tumor.
And she's clear, it was benign, not life-threatening, but the feeling of it.
Oh, absolutely. The emotional weight, even though it wasn't fatal, she describes it as just overwhelming.
The details she gives in the transcript are incredibly vivid. Remembering the sound of the clock ticking.
The coldness of the temperature of the operation room. Yeah.
And the tears running down my cheeks thinking, the time has come where I walk alone. It's just chilling. Captures that fear so well.
It really does. And that experience, that feeling of vulnerability, it actually became a turning point for her.
How so?
Well, she contrasts her own fear, which she felt even with support and access to good care. She contrasts that with women who face this with absolutely nothing. No support, no access.
Right, that comparison.
Exactly. And that comparison, she says, it completely changed her perspective. It made her see breast cancer not as some abstract thing, but something that could affect anyone, even a young girl like she was.
And how deeply it impacts lives. She uses the phrase, it shakes your soul and the souls of those who love you.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And from that really personal, soul-shaking moment, she then zooms out to the bigger picture.
Yeah, she hits us with the numbers, backs up the emotion with some pretty stark statistics.
For Thailand, she says, over 9,900 women diagnosed every year.
And almost 5,000 deaths yearly just in Thailand.
And then globally, it's even more staggering, 670,000 deaths a year.
Wow.
And she mentions this projection, potentially 1.1 million deaths by 2050 if things don't change.
That's huge. But she doesn't just leave the numbers hanging there, does she?
No, not at all. She digs into the why. Why are these numbers so high?
And this part, I think, is maybe the most critical insight she offers, something she apparently discussed even with someone from the WHO.
It is. It's quite devastating, actually. The truth she points to isn't that the disease itself is unstoppable for many.
It's the access, right?
Precisely. It's that for women in lower income areas, early detection, effective treatment, it's just not accessible. It's too far, far away, as she puts it.
So help comes too late.
Or, tragically, help never came.
And she gives that figure for her own country, Thailand. Less than 5% of cases detected early.
Less than 5%.
Oh.
Just let that sink in.
Yeah.
When you know early detection is so key.
It makes those global death tolls seem even more preventable in a way, more tragic.
It does. And she brings it right back to the human level again.
Yeah, she says these aren't just numbers. Each one is a human being, a mother, a sister, a daughter, who means the world to someone.
And then that gut punch reminder, one day that world could be yours too.
It's a very effective way to make the data resonate emotionally, connect it back to everyone listening.
Definitely. So you got the personal story, the scale of the issue, this crucial insight about access and all of that. Well, it leads to action.
This is where her project comes in. Opal for her.
My beauty with a purpose. That's the full name she gives.
And it has a dual goal, she explains. Creating awareness is one part.
And the other is actively building a future where fears and barriers cannot stand between us and our dreams. So information plus removing obstacles.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice? What are they actually doing?
Well, she gives some concrete examples. They've raised quite a bit of money, over 1 million Thai baht.
Which goes directly into their work.
Yes, things like offering free breast screenings across Thailand. That's a major initiative she highlights.
And she mentions they work with a lot of partners.
Oh yeah, quite a list. The Public Health Ministry, the National Cancer Institute, various hospitals, private companies, other nonprofits.
So it's a big collaborative effort, very strategic.
It seems so, recognizing they need broad support to make a real impact.
And what about the content side? You mentioned that earlier.
Right. She specifically talks about a podcast they produce called Braveheart.
Braveheart, what's the focus of that?
It features real stories from people affected, interviews with doctors, patients, survivors.
Okay, so sharing experiences.
Exactly. And the goal, she says, is twofold. Get correct information out there, raise awareness, but also, and this connects back to her own feelings.
So that people know they aren't alone.
Precisely. To let those in the battle know that they are not fighting alone. It sounds like a really direct way to combat that isolation she felt.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's what they're doing now. Does she talk about the future? Where does Opal for her go from here?
She does. She outlined some pretty ambitious goals.
Yeah.
One is providing scholarships for medical students.
Interesting. Why that specifically?
She talks about her belief in the impact of, a single dedicated doctor, how life-saving that can be.
Okay. What else?
They're also focused on building bridges, trying to link local communities more effectively to the national healthcare system, better connections.
Makes sense given the access issues she highlighted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the ultimate vision is clear. Every single woman gets the care she needs and deserves.
No matter who they are, no matter where they're from, she repeats that phrase.
Yes, very emphatic. And it's not just about Thailand anymore.
She mentions expansion.
Yeah, she talks about the ambition to take Opal for her beyond Thailand, across Asia, across the world, she said.
Wow, that's a huge goal.
It is. And she frames it as a kind of responsibility, something we owe to future generations.
And how does she end the speech? Is there a final takeaway?
She mentions a simple symbolic gesture, giving out the breast cancer symbol pin.
As a reminder.
Yeah. She says it's a reminder of how precious your life is and the lives of the people you love. A very human touch to end on.
Yeah. Okay, so that really was a deep dive just from one transcript. It's amazing how much is packed in there.
It really is.
You follow her journey from, that intensely personal moment at 16 through the stark data, the critical insight about access being the real killer in many places.
Right.
And then into the very practical, organized work they're doing with Opal for her, right down to creating content like the Braveheart podcast.
Yeah, you really see all the layers, the personal drive, the facts, the strategy, the big vision for the future. It shows what you can learn just by dissecting one source carefully.
Definitely. And thinking about her core argument that lack of access is such a huge barrier, maybe more than the disease itself in some contexts, and her ambition to go global. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Wonder what?
Well, what are the biggest obstacles, maybe the ones we don't talk about enough, to getting truly universal access for critical things like cancer screening and treatment worldwide? And maybe, pulling from our insights, what's like the very first practical step we could take to start chipping away at those barriers? That's a really challenging question to leave us with, something to definitely think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Hopefully you feel better informed after exploring this really compelling source with us.
Keep questioning, keep exploring. See you next time.